All right, it is coil time. All right, I want to start with an idea of what I will be coiling. So in this case, I'm going to be coiling straight up, and then I'm going to go in with my coils. Something like this, I'm just going to be going straight up the whole way. I can have my object available to look at, or I can make a sketch of it on a piece of paper in the exact size that I want. That way I can compare it to my coil project as I go. Rolling your coils. I like to do just one longish coil at a time. Some people like to stockpile them. Sometimes I worry about them getting too dry if I do that, so I like to do one at a time, but see what works for you. Okay, when I first grab a chunk of clay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make it into a very rough, large coil to start with, and I do that just by squeezing the clay and turning it. If this is too much clay to handle, just rip off a chunk, and same thing, I'm going to just squeeze the clay until I have kind of a log, and I'm trying to keep it pretty even. It's not perfect, it doesn't need to be pretty, but I'm just kind of like roughing out the shape. And once I've got something like this going on, I'm going to take it to the table. Okay, so now that I've got it down here, I'm going to start rolling. So something that I always like to point out is that I'm mostly rolling with this part of my fingers. So I'm going to roll, and I'm kind of working from the interior out. And we've kind of talked about this before, right? There's no clay here, so we can worry about this later. This is where we're going to put more pressure. We don't want to put too much pressure, but we're working from the interior out, and we're just kind of evening it out. If you find that your coil is getting too long, you can always split it in half and keep going. My goal is to get a coil that is about a 1/2 inch thick and really nice and even. If they're not perfectly even the first few times, or even every time, that's okay. As long as they're roughly even, that is just fine. I also find that I like to stand when I'm rolling my coils, but again, do what works for you. I've got my drawing, and so the first thing I need to do is make my base. Okay, so I'm going to start with a ball of clay. This is going to be the bottom of your piece, and I'm going to just roll it gently out. I'm going to keep it again about 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick. After I've rolled out this slab, I'm going to decide how wide this needs to be, and I can do that by looking at my drawing or looking at my actual object. And I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger than the original because it's going to shrink. You can measure this, find a template like a lid or something to use, or you can eyeball it. With coil, it's going to look messy before it looks really nice, so it can be a little rough at first. Okay, so now I've got my 1/2 inch coils, and I'm going to start by putting them on the base. They're just a little bit on the edge. And I'm going for a nice round form. And I like to go about 3 coils up, but you could start with 2. Actually, let's go ahead and start with 2. So I'm going to cut it off right here, and I'm going to go ahead and just smooth this coil on. Because we're working with the clay completely plastic, we don't need to scratch and score at this stage. Okay, I'm going to use my finger, and I'm going to press the clay down on the inside of the pot. And the outside of the pot. Okay, you can move it, or if you have a Lazy Susan, you can use that. As I am going around the pot, I'm supporting from the inside as I push down the outside wall, and I am supporting from the outside as I push down the inside wall. So very similar to when we made pinch pots. My goal is, once I've pushed down the outside and pushed down the inside, is for my wall to be about 1/4 inch thick and consistent throughout. Right now, it doesn't look that pretty, but let's keep going. So I've got another coil, and I'm going to add it, and right now we're going straight up because my drawing says so. So we're gonna go straight up, and again, I'm gonna add 2 or 3 lengths of coil. So right here is where we get to 2. And I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to go ahead and smooth this area. And right now I'm not pinching, but I'm just kind of making sure that everything is in line. And I'm going to do exactly what I did the first time. So supporting from the inside, I'm going to push down on the outside wall. I'm using just enough pressure to move the clay, but not enough to push it. So again, I'm going to go all the way on the outside. Whether you do the inside first or the outside first, doesn't matter. It's just whatever you prefer. I find sometimes one just feels right. Okay, and now I'm going to go on the inside. I'm going to try to show you this way. So I'm using like the side of my finger, and I'm pushing down, and I'm supporting from the outside. Sometimes I can use my thumb. Sometimes I can use a tool. So this wooden knife makes a good tool for doing the coil. Okay. So as I'm going, I'm going to just kind of smooth out the inside so that if someone looks inside, it doesn't look too messy. Okay, so I'm just tidying it up just a little. And now that we've got a little bit of height, I'm going to start to clean up the outside. So I'm going to use my wooden knife, and I'm going to just clean up. And now I'm going to use my metal rib. And again, supporting from the inside, I'm going to start to clean this up a bit more. Right now, this is very soft still, so I'm not worried about it being exactly perfect. I'm just trying to get rid of this excess clay that's in the way. Okay, so it's looking a lot better already. I'm going to just make sure that it is where I want it, that my shape looks good. I can keep going a little bit more. Because I'm going straight up, it's going to support itself pretty well, but if I find that it is getting too squishy to really go on, then I will just wait and let it stiffen up a bit more before I continue. So I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'm going to show you how to let it set up. So I'm going to go ahead and smooth out those connections. Okay, so now I'm just gonna let this sit till it gets a little bit harder. I have cut a strip of plastic, and I'm gonna put that plastic around this top lip. And that is because I want this part of the pot to stiffen up and be harder and support itself better, but I want to be able to add on here, and so I'm going to put that plastic on to keep that moist. All right, I let this sit overnight. It was on the board, loosely covered with plastic around this rim, and as you can see, it's much more stiff. It's very much supporting itself. When I take off my little ring of plastic, I see this is still nice and soft. I always like to do a little tiny bit of scratching and scoring. It's not entirely necessary because we still got really soft clay up here, but I like to do it anyway. And if your plastic didn't hold the moisture in super well and you have a less than soft rim, you just simply scratch and score. Okay, I'm going to start by, again, making that rough rope. I'm going to use again this part of my hand. I'm going to move so you can see it's a little thinner there, so I'm just going to ignore that area for a while. It's getting pretty wide, so let's go ahead and split it. We're going for 1/2 inch thick. I find sometimes as I go, or as I see students go, the coils get thinner and thinner. You might find that you are a thin coil person, and that is totally fine. But I think when the coils are too thin, gravity is pushing down too much on the clay, and it can make it a little harder to work with. So try to stick with 1/2 inch coils till you've gotten a little practice under your belt, and then of course, as always, you know, adjust to what works for you. So I'm going to do just a little bit of scratching and scoring on this first part that's going to go around the rim. Again, I'm doing nice, good Velcro here. Because our clay is still quite moist, I am going to add just the littlest bit of water. And I'm going to put this down right here. Okay, so for my object, I am still going straight up and down, but I want to show you how to go out and how to go in on your coil pot. So when I'm going straight up and down, I set my coil right on top of the coil before it. When I want to go out, I set my coil on the edge of the coil before it. And now of course that depends on how far out I want to go, but can you see? So this is right on the top, the first coil. It's right above. And then this one I put on the edge, so it's sticking out. So I'm going to show you what that looks like when I smooth it together. So when I'm going out or in, gravity is going to press on this more. So when I'm just going straight down, gravity isn't really hurting it. But if I go out or I go in, gravity wants to push the clay down. What do? 1, we can always wait and let things stiffen up. 2, we can always support on the outside or the inside as needed. So because I obviously could push this, I want to support on the outside and I want to do my smoothing. So, as you can see now, the shape is going out. I'm going to do one more round just so you can really see it. So we don't need to do any scratching and scoring because we're back to completely soft clay. I'm going to set this coil on the edge, the outside edge of the coil before it, so we continue that shape of going out. And as I place it, of course, you can kind of arrange, make sure it's doing what you want it to do. This would be a situation where you would check your drawing. As you know, I've changed my drawing, so now it's kind of going like this. Okay, so then I can check and see, like, am I getting that similar silhouette? And I am. All right, I'm gonna add this little extra piece of coil in, smooth my last coil. I'm gonna just arrange my pot, make sure the coils look the way I want to, and then I'm going to smush them. Smush is the technical term. But as you can see, this is going out. I'm going to use my metal rib. I'm going to clean up a bit. All right, so as you can see, it's a little bit tighter. It will get tighter later. But you can see our wall has gone out. Now, what if I wanted to go back in? We are going to then place the coil on the inside of the rim. So, okay, let's make our rope. And now we're going to roll, again using this part of my hands. Okay, it's pretty thick, so I'm going to split it up. Okay, now we're going to place our coil on the inside of the coil before it. Need a little extra. Okay, we're going to smooth where we connected. And now again, because we're going in, we want to support from the inside. So as I squish it, I'm going to support from the inside. Okay, as I'm squishing, things might get a little bit floppy, they might get a little bit out of whack. So again, I'm just going to check my drawing. Am I going out and then back in? Yes. All right, do I need to let it stiffen up and then clean it up? I do. So I'm going to do that and be back in a few. Okay, this is my coil piece. As you can see, we went straight up, we went out, and we went back in. Now that this has had a chance to stiffen up, it's still pretty plastic, but it's supporting itself quite nicely. Now I can kind of go in and really start to clean it up. You'll find that with the metal rib, you can kind of shape. Let me show you here. So I've got some extra clay and I'm just going to scrape it away. Right now we're removing extra clay and we're refining the shape. We are not trying to make this perfect. As we move into construction being done, so I've finished my whole bottle, I'm adding details, and that is when I can start to make the surfaces exactly as I'd like them. These are handmade surfaces, they're never going to be perfect. That's not necessarily something we're going for, but we can get a good amount of smoothness. But right now we're just refining the shape. So I think this is like what it was like before when it was still really sticky and plastic. And now that it's gotten leather hard, we've been able to start refining the shape. This is what we're looking at. You can see we've got more symmetry and that will just increase as we go. So go ahead and get started on your coil project.